So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Liam Widdop, who's founder and managing director at Waterhouse Widdop. So, firstly, Liam, if thank you for coming on board, and if you'd like to introduce yourself, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. At Waterhouse Widdop, we work with property developers to help them sell their properties faster and for more money is our
Yep.
kind of mission. So we turn bricks and mortar into desirable living spaces so that people who are going out to buy a new home fall in love with it, whether that's on Rightmove or when they walk in a show home. So it's our job to make that a desirable living space. And I think that's what our job is, to create that through our interior design, show homes and CGI and 3D visuals that we create for developers. And I suppose recently we helped a developer increase the value of his property by 83% in just 6 months.
Wow.
So that was due to our interior design solutions that we helped them to kind of market their property, sell it faster than they could have if they hadn't used our services, and then also sell it higher than the area ceiling price as well. So it
Yeah.
was kind of 11% higher than the maximum of the same type of house in that area. So yeah, that's just an example of how we help kind of investors and developers to kind of showcase their properties. And I think it's that kind of really investing into marketing as opposed to just white walls and grey
Yes.
carpets. So
Yeah, I suppose it's the difference between allowing, assuming people can use their imagination. It's actually literally saying this is how amazing it could be.
yeah, this is the space. This is where it could be, and you can then implement this yourselves, or help, we could help you to do that. So that's
Brilliant.
how we partner with developers.
Brilliant. And for anyone watching, if your website's got some amazing examples of some of the things you do, so
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
worth visiting there and just checking those things out. So Liam, if we start by looking backwards a little bit, and if you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you.
Yeah, so kind of background, I went to uni, studied kind of business management, came out in the 2008 recession in the middle of that,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
was kind of struggled to get a job, to be honest. And I kind of couldn't get any work experience due to not being able to get a job, and it was just a bit of a cycle. And I just ended up kind of going and asking for some work experience, unpaid, with a family company. And I started there and did 6 weeks work experience. On the back of that, I got employed. And then kind of worked my way up through that business to become commercial director within about 5 to 8 years.
Wow.
So it was a really great opportunity for me. I kind of showed my worth and then built on that. But with working in an SME, as I'm sure you'll know, is that pensions are not great. So I was kind of thinking, how do I retire when kind of the kind of auto enrollment starters? I was looking, how much do I need to put away? It's like I need to do something different.
Brilliant.
What if I was going to put something away each month? I wouldn't be able to retire until I was over 80, and I just didn't
Yes.
want that for myself. So I
Brilliant.
kind of looked at kind of property as an option, really. Started with my own house and then renovated that and refinanced it and got some cash out. And then I met my now wife, who was doing the same thing, totally separate, and we decided to set up a property business. So
Brilliant.
it was a property investment company that we set up, and so we've got a small portfolio of buy-to-lets and HMOs, and done over 7 flip projects
Yep.
throughout that business. That's kind of a separate business to Waterhouse Widdop. But that then, on the back of that, my wife's an interior designer and she's been interior designer for over 10 years.
Yep.
And so we're working full time for somebody else at this point as well. So like, we don't want to work for anybody else. We want to work for ourselves.
Yep.
What skills do we have between us to set up our own business? And we were getting asked from the property business, could you help us with our interiors? And we're just like, right, how can we skill stack essentially is use
Yes.
Molly's interior design, my business background and working in SME. And that's where Waterhouse was born.
Brilliant.
And what we found was Molly's kind of got both physical interior design and digital interior design expertise. So it was like we are able to start right at the very beginning for a developer. So when they're at planning stage, if they want visuals to kind of submit with planning, or they want to market their properties early on Rightmove and use 3D visuals, and we use our interior design led approach to kind of make it look just as what a show home would look like, but it's a digital 3D replica.
Yes. Yeah.
And then obviously through into actually specing all of the interiors and then staging and styling show homes is kind of the where we're like, right, there's not many people out there that do this. Interior design is quite a saturated market, if you like, but
Yes.
what we're offering from the end to end, there's not many companies do it the same way that we do it.
Yeah.
So like, right, let's kind of set this up. So that was back in 2023. And then Molly got pregnant. So we ended up having a baby, and then I got made redundant, and it was all of these things kind of came together,
Yes.
and it was like a perfect storm, really. It was like
Brilliant.
now or never.
Yeah.
And then in January 24, we launched the business, and Molly was on mat leave, and that then I kind of launched it and kind of set everything up, and then Molly joined in September last year, and then since then it's been a real success story. So yeah.
Wonderful. What a great story. And when you were growing up, is this the sort of thing you foresaw yourself doing, or did you have other plans like that?
Um, to be honest, I've always kind of had that kind of entrepreneurial kind of mindset and work ethic and wanted to work for myself.
Yeah.
But doing interior design, definitely not. That's, if I'm honest, that I aren't an interior designer. I'm kind of a non-technical director, if you like.
Yeah.
And Molly's the kind of the true creative, which is where we work really well
Yeah.
together. I
Brilliant.
do all the stuff
Absolutely.
that she doesn't like, and she does all the amazing designs. So it's yeah. So I think the skills, yeah, I kind of studied business at school, went to uni, did business management, and then really just put all of those skills into practice. But never was set on this is exactly what I wanted to do.
No, that makes sense.
So yeah, I think for anybody kind of out there, I suppose it's like you don't necessarily have to be everything, but it's finding, I suppose, a partner. My wife, which is slightly different to most, but it's finding a partner who you can kind of work
Yes.
together with and build something that is successful.
That collaboration is so important. We talk a lot about a lot of people talk about trying to strengthen your weaknesses, and there's a lot of effort and energy in doing that rather than find somebody that is symbiotic with you. Is find somebody whose strength is that weakness, if that makes sense.
Definitely, yeah, yeah,
Because I mean, we should be spending. I think it's Brian Tracy who talks about the best businesses, organizations, teams are the ones where most people spend most of their time doing the three things they really love and they're really good at,
yeah,
and
yeah.
find other people around them, however that relationship happens, that are really good at and like the things that they don't. And I think it's so key. So what are some of, obviously we've got some great successes which we'd like to talk further on, but what are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome so far?
I think as a business, I suppose, setting up a business when you've just had a child, and half of the team not
Yes,
being fully in the business, that's probably the biggest challenge.
yes,
And becoming a parent, taking the risk of, so how we kind of managed the risk, I suppose, and mitigated it is the property business has kind of been is a successful business in its own right. So our kind
yeah,
of property development business ourselves. So that kind of helps fund some of kind of the background life stuff. And we
yeah,
sold the property because we were going to keep that. That then enabled us to have a pot of cash to then invest into the business and pay for us to live. So it's kind of taken us over 15 months to start paying ourselves from this business and get it to a point where we're like, yes, we can now start taking a salary. So that was a challenge that we're just having. It's all kind of being self-funded to date. So that's probably the biggest challenge. And I suppose entering a market. So we have both had careers separately. We've got our own property business, but it was a standing start.
yeah,
So we didn't have a client list that we could go to and say, "Oh, I've left this employer. Do you want to come work with us?" And so we started from scratch, if you like, and
Yes, yeah,
then have built it up from there. So it's a lot of social media, business outreach, which is perfect for my skill set. So
yeah,
um, and then from there, Molly then came in and kind of being able to then deliver the contracts once
yeah.
we've won the work.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that was kind of getting that kind of mix right has been important.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And what are some of the things you've learned about growing a business? What are the things you think are the secrets to success?
Yeah. Secrets to success. There's a few. I think consistency's got to be the number one.
Yeah.
And personal resilience. So
Yes.
showing up every day. We have a saying in the businesses, you've if you give 100% that day, whether you're poorly or you're on top form, that's as long as you give 100%, you can walk away from that day and be happy that that
Brilliant.
was enough.
Brilliant.
And it's that waking up the next day and thinking, well, I didn't get any response back from any business development yesterday, but today I might pick up the phone and somebody might say yes. So it's that just keeping going and that consistency and
Yeah.
getting that message across because what we have, we knew people needed it, and our customers are saying yes, that we definitely need this, and someone can help us in the same way that you do. But the industry is quite piecemeal.
Yeah.
So they would go to one person for one thing and the other, but not one company to do everything. So
Brilliant.
it's that trying to get that message across and being consistent with that and refining it has been key.
That that makes sense. And I think the thing I've learned about that sort of messaging is it's got to be consistent and regular and consistent in itself. Because
Mm,
the challenge with most people is, despite us telling them that we do all these things, at the point where they buy, they're only interested in the thing that they buy at that point, if that makes sense. So
definitely,
they
yeah,
go, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, of course, of course, of course, but it doesn't. They don't record. They don't even plant it into the memory. So it is that consistent. By the way, you remember he told you last time that we do this as well. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And it because it's so often. I mean, I've never ever been into a business ever. They haven't had somebody say. Oh, I wish I knew you did that because I've just bought that from somebody else. So, but I've been telling
yeah,
you for 10 times, I've told you. But it's like, yeah, but it wasn't the right time for me to listen at that point. And I think it's just being
definitely.
understanding that. I think you're probably aware we're a business coaching organisation, Liam. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah, good question. There's been quite a few. So my previous career was in a management training company, so um, I've kind of worked with a few good ones. But I suppose the one that's kind of changed my life the most was just when I was at the point of wanting to set up Waterhouse Widdop, and that was I was kind of at a crossroads where I wanted to do it. We had the kind of idea, but I was kind of I suppose stuck in a great job, but I wasn't happy anymore.
Yes.
So I kind of invested into a coach, and one of the exercises that she got me to do was, I suppose, a life vision, and put myself in 50 years' time. I was sat on a bench looking back on my life, and then I had to write down everything that I wanted to be known for, or the things that I'd achieved,
Right.
and that really just kind of held up a mirror and said, if you are employed, you're not going to be able to achieve what you want to.
Brilliant.
And that really did kind of set the wheels in motion. And we kind of created a plan together. And a plan never goes to plan, does it? I wanted to kind
No.
of go part time in my career, but I ended up getting made redundant. But that was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Now I look back and think, yeah, that was just I just needed that. I just needed the push to get out there and just do it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. 100% agree. It's sometimes we need that big push. Funnily enough, I came to Yorkshire because I was made redundant from a job over in Manchester, and that was many years ago. And in the end, becoming joint third employee of a business that we grew and sold to Siemens many years ago, and none of
Yeah,
that would have
yeah,
happened if I just hadn't been made redundant. I would probably still be there. It was very much a it was a nice it was a nice job. It was like challenging, but easy, and I could have built a career there. But I don't think I wouldn't have done anywhere near the things that I've done as a result of coming over here. So totally get it. It's seeing a blessing. It's seeing a curse is a blessing, isn't it? It's just seeing the best in
Definitely.
what we achieve, and that creates resilience. You mentioned resilience earlier. I think I would say of the two things I ask people about on these interviews, the two words that come when I talk about business ownership. One is imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
which a lot of people have, but the second is resilience. It's those two things are spoken about more, I think, by business owners that I interview, and I think they sort of go. I don't say go hand in hand, but we need both. I think to not sorry, don't need imposter syndrome, but accepting upon imposter syndrome is a part of what of many people's lives as business owners. But I think it was Stephen Bartlett, the Diary of a CEO guy, and he said on imposter syndrome, which something I love, which he said, "I love imposter syndrome because I know I'm in the right room and I'm going to learn
Yeah.
something." And it,
Yeah, I think that's so true. Because you kind of think, should I be here? And you just kind of question yourself, and then you learn so much about just even conversation that happen across the table
yeah,
or whatever, and that's probably more valuable than than uh, than the kind of teaching. Sometimes it's just a conversation like, gosh, I'm glad I was sat there.
absolutely. I think there's a similar saying about if you're the most experienced and capable person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. And
Definitely, yeah, yeah.
it's like we can't learn from we can give obviously, but we can't receive learning from the people. And do you have any favorite quotes or sayings about business in general that you catch yourself using on a regular basis?
Um, I think there's a couple. So one is a Stephen Bartlett one, which is the one around quitting isn't for losers. And I think it's knowing when to quit
Yes.
something and kind of trusting your gut with these decisions because we can stick at things too long and
Yeah.
it's not working. And it's about how do you um, make that decision at the right time and move forward
Yeah.
and making a positive step out of what's a lot of people see as a negative,
Yeah.
but and quitting is generally people see it as a negative, but sometimes I don't know, whether it's a marketing campaign that you've invested money into, if it's not working, then invest somewhere else. So, for
Yeah.
example, we've invested a lot of time in LinkedIn, but Instagram, we works so well for us as a business. Let's invest more time there
Yeah.
and not as much on LinkedIn. Just keep that kind of ticking over and sharing positive messages, but don't invest the same amount of time as say Instagram, just as an example.
Absolutely. I think it's if we learn from a mistake or we fail, we can call it a failure if we want to. But if we learn from it, then it has value. It's not a failure. It is actually a learning exercise. And there's lots
Definitely.
of
Yeah.
opportunities to learn out there, and it's just accepting that that's the case. I think one of my favorite quotes myself is it's a Japanese. I think it's a Japanese saying, and it says fall down 7 times but get up 8.
Yeah.
I think I'm on 13 or 14 now, but it's like that's the point. It's okay to fall down. The failure, if there is anything, is in not getting up, and
It
and
is, yeah,
going
yeah.
again, and that's
And
the
having that resilience too, because that I think sometimes we can stop too soon as well. I think there's
yes,
that's where the quitting you've got to balance that.
it
You
is a
need
balance.
to you've got to kind of understand when the right time is, and it's sometimes it's your gut, but not quit too soon when you haven't tried. And truly reflecting, have you tried enough and kept going enough to really make this work?
It's such a fine balance, isn't it? Because it is about, making something work if I believe in it, but it is also looking at the evidence of is it working? Is it going to work?
Hmm.
Because we've got to accept some of our ideas aren't necessarily going to be the right ones, and that's
Definitely,
okay.
yeah.
You might mention Diary of a CEO, but do you have any favorite books or podcasts that you read or listen to on a regular basis about business success or personal development in general?
Um, Quite a few that I try and listen to. I love an audiobook.
Yeah,
And yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head that I've got one on my desk, but I've just gone blank.
All good.
But
Relax.
but yeah, no, I think Diary of a CEO is definitely one. I do kind of listen to quite a lot of property podcasts, which are
Right.
more industry specific.
Yeah.
And I suppose we've invested in HMOs, so there's a few HMO podcasts that I listen to that are more specific to that kind of thing. Um, Green Lights is a book that I've just listened to, which is what was the famous actor that wrote the book? I can't just remember his name. But yeah, Green Lights. It's a um, really good, and it's just about what are the green lights in your life that give you. It's about passing go and not kind of stopping at the red lights all the time. And if
Okay.
once you get a green light, you're like, yes, I've achieved something, and I've passed through that barrier.
Brilliant.
It's like a reflection on his life.
Brilliant. It's Matthew McConaughey. I've quickly Googled the benefits of technology. I've quickly searched.
Yeah,
So yeah, great. No, well, that's interesting. Thank you for that. That's helps me. I really like Matthew McConaughey and the way he talks. So I'll have a read of that myself.
yeah, it is a good one. It's quite an easy listen. It's just the life lessons from him throughout his career.
He's had an interesting life, I know, and
He has, yeah,
it's good
yeah,
to learn from people. And
interesting chap.
yeah, very much. And he's I didn't realize till quite recently he's best friends with another actor called Woody Harrelson, who and apparently they're literally best buddies and they hang out,
Yeah, yeah.
which is quite strange because I would have put them as slightly different characters and people, but there you go. Um, and speaking of learning, what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far, Liam?
Um, about myself, I think family is probably the most important thing to me. And that most people, but I think, and something else, I suppose money is an enabler to freedom. Is kind of a quote that I've seen recently, and I've been like, yes, I think we set up the business, especially with having a daughter and just kind of thinking, how do we work our life around what we want as much as anything, working in 9 to 5 for somebody else, whilst I got an amazing salary, had a great career, I wasn't able to do the things that I wanted. So I work a 4 day week.
Brilliant.
So that's I work Tuesday to Friday, and then Molly, my wife, she works Monday to Thursday. So we cover the 5 days.
Yep.
We both then have a day with our daughter on our own,
Lovely.
and it's just simple things like that. When you kind of work for yourself, you can do it. You've got the choice to make those decisions, or whether it's working a Sunday and then doing something else midweek, and just having that freedom of
Brilliant.
choice to be able to do that. And I think that's where that, I suppose, investing in the property side, that's a longer term investment for pension, but also it gives us residual income that we're able to make choices on our terms
Yeah.
rather than somebody else's. And I think that's really important to both myself and my wife, and both having the same goals to kind of that's what where we want to be, and that's what we want to achieve. So we're both going after the same thing. And it's quite a unique approach in terms of husband and wife doing that together and kind of investing for the future, but also, I suppose, working on a business to grow it and then see where it goes and having that joint success. It's really nice sometimes.
Brilliant. Lovely. No, that sounds great. I often say to business owners that I work with that is the challenge with owning your own business, or one of the challenges, is ultimately the buck stops with us, um,
Definitely.
up until we get somebody else for whom it can stop for. You know, if we can create a business that works without us. I said that's the challenge. But the great thing about running a business is we get to choose exactly how it is. We can
Yeah.
choose what days, how many days. We can choose who we work with, who we don't work with. These are all the freedoms we get of owning our own business, rather than when we work for somebody else. We don't have a lot of those choices. We can choose the job we go for, absolutely, but that will typically come with a 9 to 5. You know, there aren't the flexible jobs out there that there are in business ownership, I would suggest.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's just even the weather's beautiful today,
Yes,
and it's like,
I'm looking.
do you want to go and have a meeting in a beer garden, have a drink, and have your lunch, and that I can choose to do that, or there's nobody to answer to, and that's
Absolutely.
they're some of the positives, but there's also the stress and the kind of the challenges that you've got to overcome as a business owner that, and I suppose, like I've said, I invested all of our savings into this business to
Mm.
make it work. It had to work.
Well done.
And that's the kind of the balance to then the 2 years down the line, I'm able to go for a meal in the sun on my terms. And that's kind of the balance that you work towards to achieve that. And there's
Brilliant.
some of I suppose in the background, I suppose the iceberg, if you like, under the water is what you don't see. And what you do see is what we might put on our Instagram story or
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That we sell, we are putting the positive image out there. A lot of people don't see, and because we're putting that out there, people assume it's all great. They don't see all the challenges, the hard days, the long nights, the weekend
Yeah, yeah.
working, all those sorts of things. Those are the things that don't get seen by regular. But that's part of business ownership, I guess. So looking forward in, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face if any? So I've asked that question, haven't I? No,
Yeah, yeah. I think in terms of the future, we're kind of focused currently on kind of residential interior design for property developers. So that's kind of we class it as SME property developers. So
okay,
generally up to like 60 units or houses or
yeah,
flats is our kind of sweet spot where they don't have their internal team
yeah,
and they outsource their work to somebody like us. So, but I think the future we want to get into more larger scale build to rent projects. So the large skyscrapers that you see going up
yeah,
in Leeds, Manchester, those types of projects where it's a more longer term sustainable projects for us as a business.
yeah,
And in terms of challenges, I suppose it's that with most businesses, how is AI going to impact what
yeah,
we do? And I think that's from, I suppose we are building our business so it's everything's intertwined. So it's not that AI would take over everything because um,
no,
somebody puts it into Chat GPT and kind of says, "Can you create me an image of this?" Yeah, you can do that, but then you've got to have someone to then implement it, and so there's a physical person required to do that. So how do we then harness that technology to speed up our process, which then the benefits can be passed on? And I think they're the challenges that we've got to embrace, so then we're not left behind.
yeah. I agreed. I think it's understanding how it can help and support us be more effective and efficient for our clients while maintaining the human element, the element.
Mm,
The point of difference between us and you and AI is we are human, whatever that means,
definitely.
with our
Yeah,
faults as well as our benefits. And it's just understanding that, I think. And I do believe, irrespective of how good AI may or may not become, I think for a reasonable period and quite a long period, people there will be a reasonable marketplace for people that wanted to deal with people that
definitely. Yeah.
that don't say I'm dealing with a person because I think necessarily they're better than AI. And I'm not suggesting in any organization AI will be better, but it's just like I just want a human interaction. Um,
Yeah, and I
that,
think that's where a lot of our success in as a business has come from is networking. And I
yeah,
think more important than ever now is actually speaking to somebody and building that relationship. And so the amount of I've accessed some funding and they knew somebody who was a property developer and then they've introduced me as this might be
yes,
somebody that could be a good contact for you. And that's then led to business. AI doesn't do that,
yeah.
and that's the magic of kind of that human relationships and building relationships, which I don't think, well, maybe I might be proved wrong, but will be replicated in the same way.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and I'm certainly not an expert in AI. I do, I guess one thing I'm open to is the fact that there are lots of things, probably including coaching, that AI can do better at some point in the future. It's just like
Mm,
I think if we believe it won't, then we're probably going to be left behind. So if we accept it might do, but I still believe that for a reason, quite a long period of time, people are going to want to work with human beings for
definitely,
if
yeah,
only for a social, primarily the social interaction, and that. Therefore, that is still a marketplace. There will be a marketplace for more automated services, I suspect. But people,
Definitely, yeah, yeah,
and for now, they won't be as good. I don't think anything in AI necessarily is as good as the human being and the ability to interpret people's thoughts and feelings in what they do. But I think it's accepted that. But I was watching a piece from Gary Vaynerchuk, who's who's quite an interesting guy speaking on business, and he talks quite a lot about what AI will probably do. But he said, in the future, it just jobs will change. But he said in the future, people will pay to go for a walk with somebody
yeah.
because you can't do that with automation. You can't talk to another person. But if you relate that into business, there will be plenty of people that want to work with other people in business, even if maybe something automatic can do it as good as if not better. But I guess ultimately can certainly do it cheaper. Um,
Yeah,
and that's what we've got to. I think we've got to accept as human beings. That's where a lot of markets going to go, but not necessarily straight away, because most people still know and can see the difference between um, human created and AI created anything. I think it's just being cool with it, and I guess getting excited about it rather than fearing it is quite important.
yeah. I think we've got to embrace it, and I keep thinking like handmade furniture is an example, and kind of that is going to be a stamp on things made by a human, and that could be valued at some point. And is that a way of kind of getting it across?
There's a I don't know if you're familiar with the film The Matrix, but they talk about that right early on. With the first edition of The Matrix was perfect, and everybody lived on tropical islands, and
Yeah,
everything was perfect. But the human condition rejected it because it was too good, and they
yeah,
had, they
yeah,
had to put faults and problems and illnesses and things into this world. And I think we will we'll celebrate the fact that we're not perfect, and that will be part of the points of difference. It won't be perfect because you don't really want perfect.
yeah,
If that
yeah,
makes sense,
yeah.
I don't know, but it's interesting. I find it's an interesting way of looking at the future.
It is. It is.
So I'm really keen to know through your experiences what you'd say to anybody that was thinking of going into business right now, Liam.
Um, I think start is probably the key thing. That the kind of small
Love
the
it.
it's if you've got an idea, it's that small step that's kind of a marginal gain every day that you do to move that idea forward, is what you need to do. Because then in 12 months' time, you'll look back and think, I'm glad I started then. Because
Yes.
I look and think, oh, could I start sooner? Probably could, but then I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So it's like, no, I want it to be like this. But then just get out there and tell people, whether it's just having a conversation with your parents, your friend, and saying, "This is what I'm going to do." You've kind of got it out of your head and you've told somebody, and that's more of a commitment. Whether it's creating a business plan, so just that kind of, I suppose, start and then get perfect later, and build on that and compound all of your efforts
Yeah.
to create something over time, as opposed to think, right, I need to create a 100K business in 12 months. Well, you need to start today to build up to get to that point, and that's the important thing.
Brilliant. I'm interested from you, yeah, just specifically having talked to you. You talked about being made, that your plan was to go steadily into moving across from your career into this, but the defining moment was being made redundant. And say I've had that too. Do you see being made redundant as a good thing in terms of the business you have now, or less of a good thing?
I think it's a good thing. I needed that push really.
Great. Yeah.
I had all of the skills, the tools, the knowledge, everything that I needed, and I was being more risk averse. And I think there's nothing more addictive than a monthly salary. And
Yes.
it's that knowing that you are getting paid on the 28th of the month or the last Friday of the month, and you get whatever every month, you can pay all of your bills. There's nothing more that you think that it is so, but breaking that mold is so difficult and
Yep.
scary to anybody, and
Yep.
taking the leap, that's sometimes you just need a push to get you over that hurdle. And I think that's what I needed. And from there, I was like, right, we, I suppose the universe spoke to me in whatever that means, and kind of I set the business plan. We're having a child. I got made redundant. We sold the property, and I was just in the everything was just aligned for me to have a go. And if the worst case happens, I just have to go back and get a job.
Yeah,
And luckily, we're over 18 months, almost 2 years to
brilliant.
since that happened. So it's a real success.
Yeah, well done, really well done. It's I think I talk to a lot of people I work with around the idea of fear. And I'm going to use the word fear, and it could be concern or worry or whatever you want to call it. But and I think the human reaction to it, I think the human reaction to potential danger hasn't changed for 10,000 years. And
Mm,
the challenge is it's still the level of fear we feel about something like you said. What if it all fails? Well, we might have a massive fear of that, but just get another job. It's like we're not going to
yeah,
die, and but the body doesn't know that much, and it still tends to sort of carry with us. And then the more we can free ourselves from that and accept that, yeah, it's a tap on the shoulder. Look, just beware. You might need to, we're in a sort of slightly challenging situation, but the more we can say, thank you very much, appreciate that. But if you're not serving me, can you disappear back in the background and let me get on? If that
yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, final question. What would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that, Liam?
Um, oh, good question. I think for me, it was probably believe in yourself
Yes.
and kind of really trust yourself to kind of have a go and kind of move forward. I think that's the I had a lot of self-doubt and kind of imposter syndrome, kind of what you've spoken about,
Yeah.
and sometimes in this business, being a non-technical director, going into a room and we're full of other developers and interior designers, so that kind of I've got to believe in what we offer
Yeah.
is better than others, or I suppose different to others, and people will want to work with us. So I think that self-belief, personal resilience is so key. And I think I I do a lot of kind of I suppose manifesting, journaling, and really kind of trying to take the positive out of
Brilliant.
situations. And that's you've got to, because otherwise you can get a lot of negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And that's really important to overcome. And I think what are you grateful for and how can you improve tomorrow and what's been successful and what are the key things that you're going to move forward. And that just getting that out of your head and thinking, you know what, I've done a really good job and achieved so much. That's what I would kind of say. It's learning that younger and investing into that kind of education of that
Yeah.
younger would have been really helpful.
Yeah. Brilliant. Great. Very sound advice in general. William, it's been fascinating to talk to you. And for anyone that's watching would like to get in touch with you or Waterhouse, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, I think where I suppose my personal LinkedIn or Instagram are probably our main channels, or via our website, which is waterhousewiddop.com. And yeah, reach out. More than happy to
Brilliant.
help people and make amazing spaces, I suppose.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your time today. It'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months just to see what the next stage of development would be. But for now, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris.
Cheers.